What's going on, FA Nation? Jonathan here with Matt Selz, bringing you another edition of FA Sports Talk. Matt, it's been a while since you and I have had a chance to do one of these. Thankfully, since the last time we've done one to now, we actually have sports we can talk about going on.
Yeah, I mean, the last one I think was back in May, maybe? Like the second Darlington race, I think.
Right.
Yeah, my calendar operates off NASCAR schedules. That's just how it works these days. But yeah, now we get MLB and NBA and NFL theoretically, and NHL is happening with, the Canes getting salty. Yeah. They couldn't get on the ice last night.
You know what? As a Bruins fan, I was also a little salty at the idea that I would have had to stay up till God knows when to watch that game.
Didn't they say 5 overtimes?
Yeah, 5 overtimes. It was like 200-plus shots. It turns out to be a good thing, though. Reason we're running a little bit late here. I was just finishing watching the Bruins win in overtime before we jumped on here. So go Bruins, up 1-0 on Carolina. Happy to see that happening. But it's great that we can talk about playoff hockey, that the NBA is going on. We have an MLB season for some of the teams. Other teams not really playing at the moment. And then obviously upcoming NFL. So the core four are currently happening. And then we also have the other sports, notably NASCAR, which you do a great job obviously covering on our site. 2-time was it FSWA Writer of the Year award winner. So we got all the great content, and this week it's the Go Bowling 300. Is that what you said?
It's the Go Bowling 235.
235. Okay.
The more apt name, as our producer, Mr. Ed Bunnell, pointed out, would be 300 because that would be a perfect score in bowling. So it's the Go Bowling 235. It carried the name over from the Watkins Glen race. Unfortunately, it won't be held at Watkins Glen. It'll be at the Daytona International Road Course. Which nobody in the Cup Series has ever, or Xfinity, or Truck Series has ever run in their life in normal racing conditions. So should be pretty interesting because they also don't get practice this week.
So it should be fun for you when it comes to your practice reports and your driver rankings and your track breakdowns and all of the fantastic content that you put out, because you're almost driving blind, we'll say, as the drivers are.
Pretty much. I'm going to have to go research how many guys got in practice on iRacing this week, because that's about the only place they could actually get in the, quote, behind the wheel of a car on the Daytona road course. So should be a fun time. Road course racing is definitely fun to watch. You also get to watch these guys make right turns for once, because I know that's the joke. All they do is make left turns, but now they're making right turns too. And new is they're going to put on some rain tires this week. So if we get pop-up showers in Florida, which you can ask James Grande about, happens basically all the time.
It rains in Florida?
Yeah, it does, right? They get rain tires. So they're going to be driving in the rain at high speeds this week. So that should be fun too.
Yeah, because there's nothing worse than setting your NASCAR lineups and then all of a sudden you're in a 5-hour rain delay.
Yep, you know that too well.
and then you find out that the races moved to Monday and you're like, what did I do all this work for? And you're just sitting there, and then DraftKings FanDuel, they release like a Monday slate, so now you're diving more into it. It's just it's a whole big mess.
Dan Malin in with those Monday slates too. He keeps telling himself he's not going to play, and then he plays. And
they're releasing ownership from the Sunday because it locks. Yes. So then you have a feeling for how the slate's even going to break down on Monday. It's a huge mess, and Dan Malin especially. That guy's had no luck, it seems like, going down to Daytona for NASCAR races. It gets rained out, has to leave races, can't stay and watch them. It's been terrible for him.
Yep, we went down in July, and it got rained out on Sunday. We had to stay till Monday, which, was fine, but they didn't call it until after we stood in the infield for, I don't know, about 4 or 5 hours trying to avoid being wet, which is pretty hard to do. So, hopefully they get this off without a hitch. There's 3 races at Daytona this week, and then it goes to Dover, which Dan and I are probably going to be dead after the Dover race. So hopefully you can take on some of the tool stuff, because I'm not going to have a whole lot of energy left after.
Oh, are you guys going to Dover?
No, we're not going to Dover, but there's 5 races in 3 days that we're covering.
Oh, okay. Yeah, well, that's really no different than, all the NBA content.
Well, that's true.
So,
that's true.
I'm sure we'll manage. Matt, if we want to give out, an early favorite for this race, do you have a guy that you think is or maybe an early Vegas odds favorite that you have?
So Kevin Harvick's going to be the early odds-on favorite, and why shouldn't he be? He just swept Michigan. He's been basically untouchable. But on road courses, my favorite right now is Martin Truex Jr. Guy has been flat-out dominant on road courses. The only guy who's beaten him recently is Chase Elliott. And if you want to compare, you can't really compare this road course to any, but if you really want to try, you could do the Charlotte Roval, which they started racing at a couple of years ago. And Martin Truex Jr. should have won the first one, except he got spun out by Jimmy Johnson in literally the last corner of the race. And then he should have won last year, except his pit crew had an issue. So Martin Truex Jr. has been really, really good on road courses so far. So he would be my early lock-in
That guy
play.
almost never comes through for me when I put him in a lineup. So I'm excited to have overextended draft percentages.
There you go.
On Truex and watch my MTJ crashes happen. So I'll be messaging you mid-race being like, why is he negative points, Matt? What's going on?
Yeah, all sorts of point swings in NASCAR. If you're unfamiliar with NASCAR DFS, it's the best sweat possible.
Place differential is by far the most frustrating thing I've ever seen.
Yeah, because they'll be in one place and then a pit will happen, and then they'll all of a sudden be 30 spots further back, and I have to calm down these guys. Be like, they just pitted, it'll be fine.
More than any sport, you have no idea where you finish until the end of NASCAR.
Yes.
There's almost no other, like golf Sunday, maybe if you have some guys in contention that are playing late, it goes shot for shot, sure. But right. NASCAR, unlike any other sport, because like he said, a crash could happen on the final lap, and your guy that's sitting pretty with all these points ends up kaput when he's not able to finish.
Yeah, just ask Dan Malin. He was up like $2,000 at the end of stage 3 at Road America last weekend for Xfinity and wound up losing $25 because one guy crashed into a sand pit. That's right, there's sand pits sometimes in NASCAR. It's a crazy sport over here. I'm just gonna leave it at that.
That's wild. That's wild. Matt, before we move on from NASCAR, any final thoughts you want to throw out here on the Go Bowling 235? Is that what you said? What an odd
well,
name.
It's 235 kilometers is the length of the race. So That's where the number comes from. We'll have a full load of content out for Truck Series, Xfinity Series, and Cup Series. Dan Malin and I will have a podcast out, I don't know, Thursday or Friday. Track breakdowns coming out Thursday. We'll have rankings and projections and lineup generator out and and playbook and example lineups for Xfinity and Truck and Cup. So we got a whole lot of content coming out this weekend for NASCAR.
Yeah, we definitely look forward. Saturday or Sundays rather now. Saturdays as well, but Sundays very busy over at Fantasy Alarm with everything that we have going on and locking playoffs all starting up. But also starting up here, Matt, football training camps are starting up. We're getting coaches giving interviews, sort of maybe shedding a little bit of light on some rotations that we may see, maybe some players that have the edge or new strategies. And you're a New York Jets fan, so I have to come out and ask you about Adam Gase, his comments that he made about how he was planning on the offense to run this year, and most notably how they plan on using Le'Veon Bell. For me, in drafts that I've done so far this year, these best ball drafts I've taken part in, some of the industry drafts that I've done, I've avoided Le'Veon Bell like the plague, but there's a lot of sort of industry talk about really liking where his value is, and to me, I just can't trust an Adam Gase offense to produce a running back with any sort of upside, but now he's coming out with comments saying he realizes he underused Le'Veon Bell last year. He wants the offense to be closer to 70-30 when it comes to giving him the football. He wants to run more up-tempo. All of the key buzzwords you like to hear at the beginning of a year. We'll see if it actually plays through. But are you a believer in Gase, and are you a believer in Le'Veon Bell right now, given where he's going, sort of, third, fourth round ADP?
I mean, I would probably take him in that spot as likely an RB2. I mean, because he's got the highest. I know we hate the term. You were just on the radio on Monday night talking with Fency about the term upside. But I'm going to use it here because it's apropos. But he's got the highest upside for basically any RB2 that's going at that spot. But it doesn't shock me to hear Adam Gase come out and say, yeah, we're going to give the ball to our best player on the field more often than we did last year. Like, he's got to save Sam Darnold because the guy's seeing ghosts. There's still not a whole lot of semblance of a passing attack there.
Number one receiver is Rashard Perriman going into the year, basically. So.
Right, exactly. I mean, Jamison Crowder had a decent year in the slot last year.
Yeah. Denzel Mims, I guess Darnold spoke highly of Denzel Mims.
Yeah, I mean they traded up to draft him as well, so you got to expect them to have some faith in him. Chris Herndon, I don't know if you can trust at this point, either to stay on the field or stay healthy.
If you listen to Andrew Cooper, Adam Gase's offense has never been fruitful for fantasy tight ends anyways. We saw him not use Mike Gesicki at all when he was in Miami, and last year again, Griffin had a couple games there, but largely he keeps the tight ends in line to block, or they get jammed up and they don't have a lot of success in the offense anyways.
Right, exactly. So, again, it's not shocking to hear Adam Gase find some semblance of sense and say, yeah, we're going to give the ball to our best player, the guy that I traded for that I didn't really want and have been trying to get rid of for a year and a half.
Right.
I don't know. I mean, I don't trust Adam Gase in general. I don't think he's a qualified coach in really any capacity in the NFL. But the Jets did have a respectable year last year. They did better than most people thought they would, including myself, and our own Howard Bender. But we'll see. I mean, I don't know how much running they're going to be doing though, because they just traded like two of their huge pieces from their defense this offseason. Or not, I guess they traded one and one of them is I guess opting out or injured.
Right.
So
they did improve the offensive line a lot this year, which is
they did. So and the ground and pound under Rex Ryan did work for them. I mean, they got to 2 consecutive AFC championship games with Rex Ryan and Mark Sanchez, who
they had maybe a slightly better defense back then than they on the field now.
I mean, if they had Jamal Adams, it'd be comparable. But of course, they traded Jamal Adams, an all-world safety.
Maybe a couple of years when they have all those draft picks, they can make.
Well, draft picks only help if you know what to do with them. I mean, Belichick's dog drafts better than the Jets. So we'll see.
Yeah, maybe if Jets ownership is smart enough, they'll not let Gates make those decisions for them.
And they're going to be late first rounders, given the way Seattle usually.
Yeah, they're usually a wild card team at worst, so it'll be middle of the late first.
So we'll see.
What do you think about some of these other running back kind of news that we have breaking? Frank Reich said that Marlon Mack is going to be his starter. Obviously, the big discussion going into this year was, all the top running backs that came into the draft this year went to teams that seemingly already had a running back, and now there's question about the rotation and how these things are going to work. Now, for me, the key word that I read into that was Mack's the starter, but they're going to ride the hot hand. So I commented on a message that Sean Mitchell tweeted out there, basically because he's been on the Marlon Mack train at his value, which I agree with. And Justin Fensterman's the same way. You're getting Marlon Mack in the 9th round. That's great value for a guy that's going to be starting. But I read hot hand and think, well, they didn't use the 2nd round pick on the best running back in the draft class and Jonathan Taylor for a reason. And if Taylor goes out there in his first couple of carries, he's averaging 5 yards a touch, he's going to get the ball going forward. So what's your take with the Mack situation? Do you have interest in drafting him? And how are you with these rookie running backs, notably, in this situation, Taylor?
I mean, I'm higher on Marlon Mack than maybe perhaps you are. I'm not all the way in on him like Sean Mitchell and Fensty are, or appear to be at least.
Yeah.
I think it's hard to turn down his value as a 9th round pick, as a guy who, if he gets enough hot hand chances, could be an RB2 or a flex at worst. But yeah, I mean, Jonathan Taylor was a beast at Wisconsin. I mean, you're talking about a conference in the Big Ten that does nothing but run. It's the 3 yards in a cloud of dust conference, except for Ohio State. And he was the best running back to come out of that conference and in the draft. And you had J.K. Dobbins in that same conference, and Jonathan Taylor's better. He's also a pretty decent pass catcher. He's not just the, run it right up the middle type back. He can do a little bit of everything. So I think Frank Reich's comments make sense. Marlon Mack has earned the right to be the starting running back. I mean, he's been on the team longer than Jonathan Taylor, obviously. He was pretty productive when healthy last year. The offensive line is better, so that should help Marlon Mack. And again,
too,
rookies are missing training camp at this point, or some training camp. They missed. It's been
mini camps and all those things.
Mini camps, and they don't have the preseason games to get actual game reps in the NFL, which is even in the preseason, it's a step faster than college. So
right.
It's not surprising to hear him come out and say, "Look, this is our starting running back." I don't think it's really going to change Marlon Mack's fantasy value, though, because I think of any of the rookie running backs, I think Jonathan Taylor has a clearer path to starting and being valuable than.
Do you think this news would cause Taylor maybe to drop a little bit? Like we're seeing him go end of second, third round at the moment, teams.
Yeah, I think he drops.
Or do you think this is, because the question is really like, do you think this was the assumption all along that we figure Mack will probably be the lead? We're expecting Taylor to jump in, or do you think his ADP is priced off him just basically being the starter?
I think Taylor's ADP is based off the assumption that he's the starter, that they used a second-round pick to turn over the roster. They brought in, obviously, Phillip Rivers on a one-year deal. They also drafted another wide receiver, Michael Pittman. They got help in the offensive line. So I think they're trying to turn over the roster, and I think that's what's fueling Jonathan Taylor's ADP upside here. But, yeah, I think we're going to see it start to drop after that comment, which means if you're a smart fantasy player, you can get him at a better value drafting later now, because the likelihood that he's the starter by midway through the season is pretty high.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you can get a starter at a lower ADP, advantage in your favor.
Right. You mentioned J.K. Dobbins, obviously running on the same conference, drafted by Baltimore. Again, a lot of people sort of high on him as sort of the handcuff to Mark Ingram. But the special teams coordinator for the Ravens today was discussing who could be on their special teams and actually brought up J.K. Dobbins. So you got to assume if he's going to be on kick and punt coverage or, in their special teams, that he may not be as involved overall in the offense. How do you feel about Dobbins? I mean, this is an offense in Baltimore that last year was able to support a 1,200-yard rusher in the quarterback, 1,000 yards from Mark Ingram, 700 yards from Gus Edwards, and now added in J.K. Dobbins, a second-round pick. So crowded backfield, but a team that's going to run the football. But now I'm wondering if Dobbins is maybe destined, like you said, as a rookie, not really being able to get on the field as much, and they see him, at least initially, more as a special teamer.
Yeah, I mean, I asked you before the live stream what your thoughts on Mark Ingram were. He's currently, according to NFBC, or I guess NFFC, ADP going off as the 27th running back off the board. I think that's too low for Mark Ingram, given, I mean, you just read off the stats. They had, 3,000 rushing yards last year, basically?
From quarterback, 1,000 from Ingram, and 700 from Edwards.
Right, and Mark Ingram, by the way, for those that aren't aware, is also one of only 3 running backs to post 6 or more rushing touchdowns each of the last 3 years. It's only happened with 3 running backs. So the guy's still durable. He goes out there. He had a 1,000-yard year last year.
Well, not playing the final game, too. So he's basically missing that one game.
Exactly. And I don't see anything happen. I mean, they brought in Justice Hill as a rookie last year. Where the heck is that guy?
Right.
Like, he never sniffed the field. He was on special teams, perhaps, I guess. I don't know. Did they put him on a milk carton? Maybe. Right. So
we expected him to be the pass-catching back, and then Lamar Jackson never threw the running back, so it didn't matter.
Right. And then, I mean, obviously there's going to be some targets to make up because they don't have Hayden Hurst there anymore, and they don't have, But I don't see how Dobbins really supplants and becomes a valuable member of that backfield. I mean, are you higher on Mark Ingram than the 27th running back?
I've only had 1 or 2 shares of him overall, but that actually was just from recent drafts because, again, doing a little bit more deep dive research, I just saw how much they ran the football. And while my initial feeling was sort of what the industry talk was, they drafted Dobbins, he's an elite talent, is Ingram's snap count maybe in a little bit of jeopardy. And then I saw that Gus Edwards had 700 yards. I'm like, what? Well, why would they take away carries from Mark Ingram? They would probably take the carries away from Gus Edwards, in my opinion, if they really trusted Dobbins to be the guy. So I still think that, like you said, Ingram is still very solid as an RB2 if you're going to take him there. I know he had the touchdowns, but obviously the threat of Lamar Jackson running in the football downgrades that a little bit. I would have been, more trusting if, he had a traditional quarterback where I thought once they get inside the 5, they're giving the ball to Ingram and not they're running jet sweeps with, Lamar Jackson, which is likely to play. But still, like you said, he's probably still a lock for 6, 7, 8 touchdowns anyways. And as long as he gets healthy, he's another guy that, a ton of yards per carry. He's always been very consistent with that as well. So, yeah, I think that if you're looking to base, use the DFS term, like a floor level of production, there are a few more consistent running backs you'll find, especially this year with a lot of teams and their split backfields, than I would think Mark Ingram in an offense that's going to run the ball probably 70% of the time.
Yeah, and I just did the red zone consistency report in the NFL draft guide, and actually Mark Ingram touched the ball in the red zone more than Lamar Jackson did on rushing plays. So obviously all of the passing plays, Lamar Jackson touched the ball because he's the quarterback. But in terms of rushing the ball in the red zone, they turned to Mark Ingram quite a bit last year. So, and for those that are saying, well, he turns 31 this year, okay, but he was only ever in a dual role in New Orleans. Right. He was never the lead back, really, except for, Kamara's rookie year?
Yeah, it was very
But then that was like 4 games.
There was always something weird with him in New Orleans because they seemingly never wanted to let him be the lead guy. They even brought in Adrian Peterson for a spell as like a guy that was going to share those early down carries, and you're like, why are they not? Yeah, right. It's like, why are they not giving early down work to Ingram? They invested the draft pick, and he's always been productive. So, he finds himself in a similar situation, but at least, again, I think you're right. I think there's a potential where people are and this is a conversation I have with Fensty a lot, and Ronus's take usually is like looking for league winners, right? Looking for guys that have the upside of an RB, 101, to be the top 5 guy. And Ingram doesn't really present that, but he is a guy that you can count on down, game in, game out pretty much to give you 12 fantasy points, probably minimum, 60 in a score, like something in that range. And obviously there's a little bit more upside than that too. So I'm with you there. I think Ingram maybe should have a little bit more value.
Yeah, I don't understand what the J.K. Dobbins, I get he's a talented dude, but again, he's a rookie. There's limited time for him to get used to a playbook. Harbaugh hasn't really seemed to trust rookies really that much. We all talk about Belichick not trusting rookies. Harbaugh hasn't really done that in the past either. So, the special teams work.
I'm always a little curious on the Belichick rookie train. Like, there are certainly some rookies that play, but on the offensive side, I always wondered how much of that was Tom Brady than it was Bill Belichick. It seemed like a lot of times Brady, those guys he felt like needed more seasoning. They weren't on the same path as him. He just X'd them off, and it's actually a great transition to Keyshawn Vaughn.
Yeah, I was just thinking about that.
They bring in LaShawn McCoy now. McCoy himself has come out and said, I'm just here to be a mentor, basically. He said that Ronald Jones is the number one. This is McCoy saying that Ronald Jones is the number one running back on that team. But there was a lot of helium going in with the Keyshawn Vaughn draft pick in round 4 that this is the guy at Vanderbilt. He caught the football, yada, 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 and all this noise. But Brady likes his veterans. We know that Jones is sometimes inconsistent. McCoy could maybe come in and be the RB3 on the roster initially, but if he works his way into the circle of trust with Tom Brady, ultimately Brady ends up getting what he wants half the time. So, McCoy could have some value, and that cuts into everything. Plus, now I'm not even going to try to pronounce his name. This is my terrible fantasy analyst. But is it like Abungwale or something like that?
I think so.
Yeah,
I can't pronounce it either.
Yeah,
so.
But he is getting a lot of hype again now too, as a guy that everybody should be looking at as a deep sleeper, as a guy who can catch passes out of the backfield. And last year a little bit he brought in some value as well. So, there's definitely a bigger backfield, I feel like, mess in Tampa right now. And a lot of people are still, I feel like, overdrafting a little bit Keyshawn Vaughn, as if they don't understand, at least from a guy who's watched Tom Brady play, he doesn't typically gravitate towards these rookies very easily.
Yeah, the pass blocking is probably a huge thing from rookie running backs. The system at Vanderbilt is kind of a wide open one. I'm not sure how much pass blocking Keyshawn Vaughn really did or perfected there at Vandy. And again, to harp on it some more, we have an abbreviated live game training camp for these rookies. So how much pass blocking experience is he really going to pick up in camp when, he's blocking for a guy with the red jersey on who's not allowed to be even blown on in camp because they don't want him, whiffing of an injury. So I'm not really shocked that they brought in LaShawn McCoy. I don't think it's just a ring hunting mission for LaShawn McCoy. Mm-hmm. I think it's the fact that Brady didn't feel comfortable having a rookie running back next to him in some passing situations. I think that's exactly what it is. And then McCoy's exact remarks that I'm a mentor, a.k.a. I'm going to teach this kid how to pass block so that when my year is done, Brady can trust him in the second year. I think that's exactly what they're doing.
Yeah, and before we wrap this up, because that 30 minutes went quick here, Matt, Lamar Miller signing with the Patriots. Talk about veteran running backs. This one, I think, maybe could be a little bit more interesting because Sony Michel on the pup with his foot. They drafted Damian Harris last year, but didn't really give him any snaps whatsoever. They have Rex Burkhead as more of the special teamer gadget. He can fill in for early down work if you need him. He can spell James White if you need him, but he's certainly not the guy that's going to be your every down back. Do you think that there's any value in Lamar Miller, coming off that torn ACL, having not played, or do you think this is more of just Belichick kicking the tires, getting a camp body in?
I think there's actually value here. When Belichick signs somebody, you kind of have to pay attention, which stinks as a Jets fan because oftentimes he will pick up the guys from the Jets trash heap and then they become like all pro players. So I think he's got genuine concern about his running game because I'm sure he knows that Cam probably isn't going to run as much as he used to given his injury history and how beat up he's been. Mm-hmm. Don't know if Jared Stidham's really a runner or not. I didn't get that impression from him. I think he's more
mobile,
of a pocket.
But he's mobile, but he's certainly not a running quarterback.
Right, he's mobile in the way that Brady was mobile.
I'll give him a little more credit. I would say he's closer to Jimmy Garoppolo mobility, where if Garoppolo gets out of the pocket, he can certainly run for the first down. Where Brady, if he got out of the pocket, he was. Yeah. Brady looked like he was running on stilts half the time when he was trying to. Get out of the pockets. But it can actually move a little bit, but he's definitely more of your pocket QB.
So I think with Michelle on the pup list and having his now kind of lengthy list of injury concerns here in his short career and not knowing what you have really behind him, because let's face it, Rex Burkhead is not a lead running back. He is a gadget. He's like a Danny Woodhead type guy. So So I think there's actually value here to Lamar Miller. I would not touch him in anything above the last, 4 rounds probably.
Definitely a last round pick for me.
Yeah. So, but I think there might be some sneaky value if Michelle's knee lingers a little bit too much, foot injury lingers a bit too much, or they just don't trust him coming back. Lamar Miller's he's got a history of producing at the NFL level, so it's kind of an interesting sign here for the Patriots.
Yeah. Last thing, again, before we wrap up, because there was a hot take that we gave earlier, or not hot take, but hot news story, in my opinion. The NBA is expanding the bubble for players that are in the playoffs to allow them 4 guests with the ability to have more if they're children. If you did the quick math of 14 team rosters versus the 16 players or 16 teams that are in the bubble, you're looking at an added 1,000 people to the bubble, which is I understand they're all going to be tested and they're all going to have to adhere to the same rules, but the whole point of a bubble is keeping it isolated, and now you're adding in a humongous population
who can fly on the team jet, by the way, they said.
Right. It seems like a nightmare scenario, but NASCAR recently had fans as well. So my question is, how are you feeling about this, and how was NASCAR's experiment with their fans?
So NASCAR's experiment with the fans has gone pretty well, actually. The most recent one that had fans was New Hampshire a couple of weekends ago. That went pretty well. The biggest one so far since the pandemic is actually started and shut everything down was at Bristol for the All-Star race. They had 20,000 fans at Bristol Motor Speedway, which, by the way, holds about 100 to 120,000 people. So you're still talking it's a small percentage of the actual capacity. But we're now more than about a month or so, I guess, removed from the All-Star race, and there's been no outbreak in that vicinity. So that's gone pretty well. But if I'm the NBA, I don't really understand. You've been lauded for how well this has gone. You and the NHL have proven that baseball did it wrong. Mm-hmm. You and the NHL are the reason why college athletics are shutting down and now, I guess, maybe discussing bubbles or smaller, like, pockets of regional games. The NBA is the reason the MLS has bubbled up in Orlando, and the women's and WNBA, I think, bubbled up too. And why are you going to make yourself vulnerable for that? You already had Lou Williams leave to go get chicken wings from a strip joint.
Right. And
I don't think somebody's cousin
back with them,
Yeah, and you don't think somebody's cousin is going to go do the same thing and infect literally the entire bubble because they're not going to be tested, I'm guessing, quite as well as the players?
I would hope they would be. I would
hope so, but they said once they pass, they can get in. So does that mean...
If they're in a bubble and DeAndre Ayton can miss his test, I'm sure DeAndre Ayton's cousin can miss his test, and it'll be less important to the NBA to make sure he gets tested. So, I agree. This is setting themselves up to be a massive failure after, like you said, being lauded for actually doing the right thing and having a plan that worked and, supposedly setting an example. And now you're just, like, poking a hole in that bubble. And, if you take
players miss their kids? Like, get them better Wi-Fi so they can FaceTime more often. Like, I don't know what...
So I'm actually even a little bit okay if it was strictly your wife and kids, but it's not. You have 4 guests.
Right. And by the way, if you want to say, okay, these are my 4 guests, and then I want my kids, you can expand it.
Yeah, exactly.
It can be exceeded. So Phillip Rivers would be loving this if the NFL did the bubble life. Right. He could get all 9 of his kids.
9 kids and then 3 of his friends.
Because the jokes came out, he'd have to kick kids out of his house because you can only hang out in groups of 10 people. Right. So, but yeah, I don't understand why they're opening Pandora's box here. Like,
in Florida, no less.
Yeah, exactly. It's not like it's calmed down at all. I mean, luckily I came back. I'm good. I went to Florida a couple of weeks ago. We didn't go anywhere when we went there. We just hung out inside my in-laws' house. Right. But, like, I don't understand, like... And for all but 2 teams, they're going to be gone. 2 teams are going to make it to the championship, so they'll be in the bubble for, 2.5 months?
Yeah.
But in the first round, and it said after the first round, right? Isn't that what the news release said, or it said for the first round?
I thought it said all teams in the playoffs could bring their...
Oh, okay.
Yes. I thought I could be mistaken.
Half the teams in the first round are only going to have their guests there for, 5 games, 7 games?
Right, max, yeah.
And it's not like there's extra travel days built in like a normal NBA playoff series because nobody has to travel anywhere. You just got to walk from your hotel.
You're right. It says after the first round of the playoffs. Okay, so a little better, right? You're going to eliminate...
I guess you're reducing it.
Teams. Still too many people.
But, again, only half the teams are going to make it past the second round. So, why are you inviting Pandora's box for what could be a week's worth of games? It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, it makes no sense to me. I agree with you there. But all right, man, we are out of time, though. Any final thoughts? Actually, before we wrap it up, I want to let you guys know on a deal that we have right now. We have a contest going on where you can win a lifetime subscription to Fantasy Alarm. All you have to do is purchase our NFL Pro Package, which comes with the NFL Draft Guide, comes with the cheat sheet, comes with all of the in-season content, all of the DFS content that we put out during the NFL season, all that for $49.97. And along with that purchase, you get entered into the drawing to win a free lifetime membership, something valued over $700 or something crazy like that, Matt.
For 1 year.
Yeah, right.
And you don't have to pay again. You just get all of our stuff
forever.
For free.
For lifetime.
For until you die.
Right, for you then. So $49.97, buy the NFL Playbook Pro package. Get all the information you need leading into your draft, with your draft guide and cheat sheet, all the information you need to win your leagues during in-season and in DFS, and have the opportunity to win a free lifetime membership. Go to facealarm.com/NFL Pro to purchase that now and enter the drawing. Good stuff there for sure. Get all of the analysis for myself, Matt, and the rest of the FA family. Any final thoughts here, Matt, before we close out?
Nope. I mean, it's just another crazy. I mean, we got a fully loaded week here. We got MLB tonight. We got MLB the rest of the week, unless, of course, the Cardinals want to partake, and then maybe not. We've got NBA. We've got NHL. Playoffs are going on. NASCAR is coming up.
UFC pay-per-view on Saturday. UFC 252. Cormier Miocic for the heavyweight title.
We'll have coverage for that. Podcast, videos, playbook. We have CSGO coverage still coming out.
Sean's back at it with the contest. We actually had someone win the 100K GPP for MMA last week. Split it with 100 people, but he came in first place.
So still won $9,000.
Still won $9,000. So, you know, the MMA playbook still on point. So definitely be on the lookout for everything.
NASCAR, we won a sub $3,500 last weekend in Michigan.
That's this weekend. PGA is this week as well. So
we've got a lot of stuff.
A lot of stuff. All of it that you can get by becoming an NFA subscriber, and of course having the chance to win the lifetime membership forever. So for Matt Selz, John Impemba here. We'll catch you guys next time.